The heat was a living thing, a searing dry breath that never paused. Elias Vane knelt in the sand, his knees already burning through the thin canvas of his trousers. The great Aridian desert was a merciless mistress, but Elias was used to her moods. For 10 years he had chased the ghost stories of this expanse, tales of ancient forgotten cities and star metal that fell from the sky. Most people called him a crackpot. Elias called it dedication. Today dedication was winning. He had followed the seismic scans to this specific dune, a place known locally as the Whispering Grave. Sweat tracked through the grime on his face as he brushed away the last layer of silt. Beneath it, a strange, obsidian-like rock formed a perfect, unnatural circle. At its center lay a cavity, and within that cavity something gleamed. It wasn't gold. It wasn't bronze or iron. It was a ring, not a crude circle but a perfect, shimmering band of what looked like liquid starlight solidified. Its material was unlike anything he had ever logged in his archaeological databases. It hummed with a low, almost imperceptible vibration, and its surface was etched with symbols that looked less like a language and more like constellations compressed into metal. Elias paused, his heart thumping a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He knew the rule: never touch the relic until it's documented. But a deeper, far older instinct, the explorer's thirst, overrode his training. He reached out a trembling hand and picked up the ring. It was cool to the touch, a shocking relief against the desert's inferno, and it pulsed faintly once, twice. The moment it slipped onto his right index finger, the desert screamed. Not a sound of sand or wind, but a cacophony of pure energy that erupted inside his skull, loud enough to physically rattle his teeth. Elias stumbled back, his vision momentarily whiting out. He clutched his head, expecting pain, but what replaced the noise was a chilling, crystalline voice that spoke directly into the center of his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "You have claimed the Oathstone." Elias gasped, scrambling backward on the gritty sand. He stared at the ring, but it merely glowed with a gentle, inner blue light. "Your bride comes from the stars." The words were not a warning but a proclamation heavy with an ancient authority. As they faded, the ring flared, and a holographic projection shimmered into existence 3 feet above his head. The image was perfectly clear, radiating a soft, cool luminescence that cut through the harsh sunlight. It was a woman. But not of this earth. She was tall, ethereal, with skin that had the translucency of moonlight. Her ears swept up to delicate, pointed tips, and her eyes were a mesmerizing deep sapphire, ringed by tiny moving celestial patterns. She wore armor of shimmering white and silver that looked like sculpted light, and a circlet of blue crystal rested on her pale platinum blonde hair. She was stunning, regal, and possessed a devastating power that even her silent image could convey. The projection held his gaze, and Elias felt a dizzying sense of recognition, a pull that transcended logic and distance. The desert was gone, the heat was irrelevant. All that existed was the woman of starlight floating above the dune, and the voice in his head repeating the vow. "The Starlight Prophecy is now bound. Your bride comes from the stars. Prepare yourself, Elias Vane." The light vanished. The desert returned. Elias sat utterly alone in the crushing silence, the phantom image of the woman seared behind his eyelids. The ring on his finger felt heavy, a burden of destiny he never asked for. He was an archaeologist, not a groom. And certainly not a groom for a celestial queen. He stood up slowly, the sand falling from his trousers, his mind racing. He had found his greatest artifact, but it had come with a terrifying, beautiful price. He knew, with a certainty that shook him to his core, that his life of lonely exploration was over. The stars were about to answer the call of the ring, and he had absolutely no idea what to do next. The air was still, thick with the silence that follows an impossible event. Elias stared at the ring, then back at the dune, then up at the indifferent blue of the sky. "Your bride comes from the stars." The phrase echoed, mockingly romantic, in his ears. He pinched the bridge of his nose, trying to ground himself in logic. Holographic projection. Advanced technology. Maybe some kind of ancient, sophisticated defense mechanism tied to the ring. But the feeling of that voice, the sheer power in the image of the woman, that was no trick of light. That was real. He took a deep, shaky breath. His first instinct was to bag the artifact, report the finding to the Institute, and then probably be committed to an asylum. His second, far more compelling instinct was to wait. The ring hadn't finished its message. He decided to move his jeep, the Sand Rover, to a more discreet location behind a ridge, covering the tire tracks with careful sweeps of a shovel. He then set up his long-range sensor array, not looking for geological anomalies this time, but for something he couldn't even name, a sign of celestial arrival. He knew it was crazy. He knew he should be miles away, speeding back to civilization. But the ring was hot, figuratively and literally, a small star on his finger, and he couldn't leave. The weight was agonizing. The sun began its slow, brutal descent, painting the dunes in shades of burning orange and deep crimson. Elias sat perched on the ridge, binoculars pressed to his eyes, watching the horizon. He checked his supplies, recalculated his water, and tried to convince himself that the fatigue and heat had simply induced a vivid hallucination. Then the sky tore. It began not with a roar, but with a silent, blinding flash high above the western horizon. It wasn't a meteor, it was too slow, too deliberate, and the light it emitted was a vibrant, impossible blue-silver, like an electric star falling. It grew rapidly, tracing an erratic, unstable path. It wasn't falling, it was crashing. The sound followed seconds later, a thunderclap that shook the very foundations of the desert, followed by a tearing, grinding shriek that spoke of metal and atmosphere fighting a losing battle. Elias dropped his binoculars, adrenaline flooding his system. The light plunged down a few miles away, hidden by the complex geometry of the dunes, and the resulting impact was a muffled explosion that sent a plume of dark, disturbed sand and vaporized rock towering into the darkening sky. This was it. The arrival. Elias grabbed his emergency pack, a coil of rope, and the satellite phone he would likely never use. He didn't think about danger, or aliens, or government intervention. He only thought about the woman from the image and the words, "Your bride comes from the stars." He jumped into the sand rover and drove, ignoring the rough terrain, the headlights cutting two frantic white beams into the rapidly falling night. It took him 20 minutes of aggressive driving to reach the site. The scene was one of impossible devastation. A massive, steaming crater gouged deep into the sand, and at its center lay the wreckage of what looked like a sleek, delta-winged vessel, its hull scorched and twisted but undeniably fashioned from the same starlight metal as the ring on his finger. The air was thick with the strange, coppery scent of ionized gases and desert heat. Smoke and residual blue energy pulsed around the broken ship. Elias approached cautiously, his heart hammering the inside of his ribs. He could see no bodies, no movement. Just wreckage. Had she survived the impact? He skirted the edge of the crater, shining his powerful tactical light into the debris. He stopped dead. Lying half unconscious on a slab of fractured, glowing hull was the woman. Anya. She was exactly as the projection showed, but infinitely more real, more vulnerable. Her silver armor was cracked in places, and a faint line of luminous blue blood tracked down her temple. Her eyes were closed, but her delicate, pointed features held a fierce, unyielding dignity even in repose. The circlet of blue crystal was still in her hair. Elias instinctively rushed forward, scrambling down the slope of the crater. He reached her side, kneeling in the hot dust. Her skin was cool, dangerously so. "Hey," he whispered, gently touching her shoulder. "Are you all right? Can you hear me?" As his fingers brushed her armor, the ring on his finger flared with a blinding intensity. Anya's eyes, the mesmerizing sapphire eyes rimmed with stellar light, snapped open. She looked at him, and her gaze was not one of confusion or fear, but of an ancient, cosmic recognition. Her lips, tinted with a faint blue pigment, parted. Her voice, when it came, was not the disembodied sound from the projection, but a low, melodious whisper thick with an alien accent. "The Oathstone bearer," she murmured, her gaze locking onto the glowing ring on his hand. "You are Elias Vane. I recognize the signature. I am Anya." She tried to sit up, wincing from the effort. Elias supported her gently, careful not to touch the cracked armor. "I need to know where the displacement core is," she commanded, the weakness in her voice giving way to urgent authority. "The vessel, it was compromised. I must secure the core before the pursuit signal activates." Elias frowned, utterly lost in the technical jargon. "Slow down, Anya. You just crashed a spaceship. You need help. A medic." "No." Her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength, her touch like ice. "No terrestrial intervention. They will find me." Her sapphire eyes widened, scanning the night sky with a deep, desperate terror that belied her regal appearance. "He will find me. Malacher is coming, and if he finds the core here, both your world and mine will be destroyed." Before Elias could process the name Malacher, the ring on his finger throbbed again, and a small, urgent red light blinked rapidly on the shattered control panel of the wrecked ship. Anya pushed herself up, staggering to her feet. "Too late. The signal is active." We must move. Now. If you truly bear the Oathstone, then you are bound to meet Elias Vane. Let us away from this place. The fate of Aetheria rests on your desert tracks. The desert, which had seemed empty moments before, now felt suffocatingly small. Elias looked at the impossibly beautiful, impossibly demanding alien queen, at the steaming wreckage, and at the glowing ring on his hand. His life was officially over. He had a duty, a bride, and an interstellar enemy named Malacher. Okay, Elias said, swallowing hard and forcing his archaeologist's brain to prioritize survival. Okay, Anya. Get in the jeep. We run. The battered sand rover groaned under the new, impossible weight of its mission. Elias slammed the gear into drive, the tires spinning momentarily before catching traction on the loose desert slope. Anya sat beside him, rigid and alert, her silver armor catching the faint light of the distant stars. Her regal posture seemed entirely out of place in the jeep's dusty cabin, which smelled faintly of stale coffee and machine oil. I need to understand what you mean by the pursuit signal, Elias said, his eyes scanning the rearview mirror for any light that shouldn't be there. The ring on his finger pulsed with a cold, steady light, a bizarre co-pilot in this desperate flight. Anya turned her sapphire gaze toward him, and it felt less like being looked at and more like being analyzed. The escape pod, or what you call the vessel, was designed to mask its trajectory. However, critical impact, such as the one from my crash, automatically triggers an emergency beacon. My civilization, Aetheria, is not the only entity that monitors this sector. Malacher's forces use automated long-range orbital scanners. That beacon has given them our position, and it will be refined within the next Earth cycle. Next cycle, Elias muttered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. 24 hours. And who exactly is Malacher? He is a general of the Starlight Guard, Anya explained, her voice low and tight with palpable hatred. A powerful man within the Aetherian Senate, obsessed with the Starlight Prophecy. The prophecy, that's me, right? The chosen one, who finds the ring. The Oathstone. Yes. The prophecy states that when the core world of Aetheria faces its final existential threat, a threat of solar collapse, the Oathstone must be given to a soul-matched sentinel on a distant, stable world. That sentinel will then bond with the Starlight Bride, myself, to create a unified energy conduit. This conduit alone can stabilize the orbital decay of our home sun. Elias swerved violently to avoid a rock formation, the jeep nearly tipping. Wait. You're telling me this ring is a key and you are here to marry me, a complete stranger, to save your entire civilization from a dying sun? It is not about sentiment, Elias Vane, but necessity, Anya stated plainly, though a flicker of something unreadable crossed her features. Our union is a cosmic contract, not an emotional one. And Malacher? He believes the prophecy is blasphemy. He believes the core world should be saved through the sacrifice of lesser planets, like yours. He wants the Oathstone and the bride, not for the prophecy, but to perform a transfer ritual that will siphon the gravitational stability of Earth to save Aetheria, condemning your world to slow destruction. Elias felt a cold dread settle in his stomach, far colder than Anya's skin. He hadn't just found an artifact, he had found a cosmic suicide bomb. And the displacement core? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. It is the heart of my vessel's power. It contains the stored energy of a captured nebula, the power needed to create the final energy conduit upon our union. It is what Malacher truly desires. I was supposed to secure it at the site. But I was wounded. I failed. Anya's hand instinctively went to her fractured armor. So, Malacher will follow the pursuit signal, retrieve the core from the wreckage, and then come for the two of us. Elias connected the terrible dots. We need to get far away. Where can we go? Do you have any hidden caches, any base of operations? Anya shook her head, her platinum hair swaying slightly. I came alone. My landing was compromised. I have only the Oathstone's guidance. She looked around the cramped, rattling jeep with unconcealed disdain. We must find a place of deep silence, a place where the electromagnetic signature of the ring can be dampened. Aetherian technology relies heavily on natural energy flows. We must hide in a place that has none. Elias thought desperately. The Aridian desert was vast, but it was also relatively flat and exposed. Every direction led to civilization, where they would be found instantly. But there was one place. A place he had been researching for its anomalous lack of magnetic interference. A geological dead zone. I know a place, he said, adjusting his course sharply toward the southeast. It's a system of ancient, deep canyons, almost entirely shielded from radio and magnetic waves. The locals call it the cradle of silence. It's remote, unforgiving, but we might be invisible there. It'll take us at least 12 hours of non-stop driving to reach it. Then drive, Elias Vane, Anya commanded, her eyes fixed on the distant, star-filled sky that was slowly becoming their enemy. Drive with the focus of a star falling toward its destiny. We must make it to this cradle of silence before Malacher's scout ships arrive. Elias pressed the accelerator, pushing the jeep past its safe limits. He was no longer just Elias Vane, the lonely archaeologist. He was the sentinel, the reluctant groom, and the last desperate chance for two worlds. The desert sped past in a blur, carrying their impossible destiny toward the canyons. The black void of space was a canvas for wrath. Aboard the Aetherian interceptor Aegis, several 100,000 miles from the Earth's atmosphere, General Malakor stood before the shimmering tactical display. His face, sharp and handsome, was currently contorted with fury. Unlike Anya's luminous beauty, Malacher's features held a cruel, refined edge, and his eyes were a cold, hard silver. He wore the full regalia of the Starlight Guard, darkened, matte black armor trimmed with menacing crimson lines. "Idiot girl," Malacher hissed, his voice a low growl that carried an unnatural resonance through the bridge. "She actually engaged the Oathstone protocol. After all my warnings." A subordinate, a pale, nervous officer named Tyron hovered nearby. "General, the data is confirmed. The pursuit signal was activated upon impact on the primitive planet, designation Terra. Initial scans indicate the Starlight Bride, Anya, is alive and mobile. However, the displacement core remains at the crash site." Malacher's lips curled into a predatory smile. "A predictable failure. She has the ritual key, the Oathstone, but not the power source. That is fortunate for me. Prepare the Harbinger drone. I want the core retrieved immediately. And Tyron, plot a direct, low-orbit intercept path for the Aegis. I want to feel the heat of that sand when I land." Tyron gulped. "General, the Senate mandates a cautious approach to primitive worlds. Violating the interspecies non-interference compact could." Malacher whirled, his movement a blur of polished black armor. He backhanded Tyron across the face, the impact sending the officer sprawling to the deck. "The Senate is composed of old fools who cling to dead prophecies. They would see Aetheria decay into oblivion rather than perform the necessary sacrifice. The prophecy requires a union with a savage from this dust ball. My ritual requires only the bride and the core. We will harvest this planet's gravitational anchor and save our home as is our right. I will not be the generation that failed Aetheria. Now dispatch the drone and ready my landing pod. I will personally supervise the retrieval of the bride and the Oathstone." The cold, ruthless conviction in Malacher's eyes confirmed one thing. His mission was not survival, it was supremacy. He viewed the inhabitants of Earth as mere energy reserves, and Elias Vane was merely an annoying obstruction soon to be vaporized. Meanwhile, on the dusty, speeding surface of Earth, the journey of escape was forging an uncomfortable bond. The sun had fully vanished, leaving behind a sky of impossible clarity, revealing constellations that seemed to mock the jeep's frantic pace. Elias drove, his knuckles white on the wheel, while Anya sat in stoic silence, occasionally shifting in pain. "I need to look at that wound," Elias finally said, breaking the silence as they navigated a dry riverbed. "Your armor is cracked and you're bleeding blue. That can't be good." Anya remained facing forward. "My internal regeneration matrix is functional. It requires focus, not distraction." "Distraction? You're my destiny, Anya. A destiny that could end up with both of us pulverized by your enraged general," Elias retorted, the stress finally catching up to his tone. "I'm trying to save your life so you can save your world. Let me help." Anya slowly turned to face him, the moonlight highlighting the severe beauty of her face. "You speak of saving my life, yet you still call me the bride, and your destiny. Do you truly believe in this prophecy, Elias Vane?" Elias slowed the jeep to navigate a difficult incline. "I believe in what I saw. I believe in the ring, in the spaceship crash, and in the sheer, terrifying reality of you. As for destiny? I was just a dusty academic looking for old stones. Now I have a stellar queen and a mad general chasing me. It's certainly a fate, whether it's destiny or just colossal, intergalactic bad luck." Anya let out a small, almost imperceptible sound that might have been a laugh. "Bad luck. A terrestrial concept. In Aetheria we call this the convergence of probabilities. The Oathstone chose you because your genetic markers possess a specific symbiotic resonance with my own, a pairing required for the energy transfer. That is all." "So, you're saying I'm just a human energy socket," Elias summarized, a bitterness creeping into his voice. He had felt that strange, powerful recognition when he first saw her projection, and to have it reduced to a scientific formula stung more than he expected. "Precisely," Anya confirmed, her voice devoid of malice but full of clinical detachment. "But do not misunderstand. Your survival is now paramount. I cannot fulfill the ritual without your life force intact. You are, currently, the most valuable asset on this planet." Elias couldn't help but smile slightly, though it was a tight, weary smile. "Well, that's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." He glanced at her, noticing her intense gaze on the ring. She seemed momentarily distracted, focused inward. He seized the chance. "We're stopping for 5 minutes to check the engine. You're letting me look at your wound." They pulled to a stop beneath a massive, overhanging rock that offered a sliver of cover. While Elias checked the Jeep's overheated radiator, Anya reluctantly allowed him to inspect the damaged part of her armor. As he carefully lifted a broken shard, revealing the tissue beneath, Elias realized the blue blood was not flowing from a simple cut. The tissue was glowing faintly, and beneath the damaged metal, the injury was knitting itself closed at an alarming speed, driven by the regenerative matrix she had mentioned. "Remarkable," Elias breathed, his archaeological curiosity momentarily overriding the danger. "It's healing itself. You're like something out of a myth." Anya withdrew slightly, pulling the armor shard back into place. "All Etherians possess this capability, though mine is significantly boosted for this mission. But the energy drain is substantial. We cannot afford another conflict." Suddenly the silent desert was interrupted. A faint, high-pitched whine cut through the air, growing rapidly louder. Elias's head snapped up. "That is not wind. That is a machine." Anya's sapphire eyes narrowed with immediate dread. "The Harbinger drone. Malacher is moving faster than anticipated. It's automated, heavily armed, and its prime directive is to secure the core and neutralize any threats, which now includes you, Elias Vane." The whine peaked, and a sleek, silent black drone, barely visible against the night sky, zipped low over the ridge they had just passed. It was heading directly toward the crash site. "It will retrieve the core," Anya whispered, her face pale. "And once it confirms our escape, it will turn back and hunt us down. We are out of time. Drive, Elias. Drive for the cradle." The brief moment of quiet shared curiosity was shattered. Elias scrambled back into the driver's seat, the engine roaring to life as he mashed the pedal. The race was no longer against the clock, but against a sentient, armed killing machine that would soon be on their tail. Aiming for the roughest, most unpredictable terrain. He needed to be invisible, but the drone was already searching. Anya, braced with one hand on the dashboard, pointed toward a narrow, dark crevice slicing through a ridge. "That crevice? It will block the line of sight for a moment. Go." Elias wrenched the wheel, power sliding the Jeep expertly into the passage. Sand and dust billowed up, momentarily obscuring their retreat. He drove for what felt like an eternity in the confined space, the Jeep's frame scraping against the rock walls. The moment they burst back into the open desert, the sound returned, sharper, closer, and now overlaid with a new, menacing tone. A high-frequency sonic pulse struck the rear of the Jeep, not with impact, but with a terrible resonant vibration that made the metal whine and Elias's teeth ache. "It's mapping the terrain," Anya shouted over the engine noise. "It knows we're here." "Elias, the Oathstone." "What about it?" he yelled back. "Its energy signature is still broadcasting faintly. It is a beacon. You must dampen the signal." Elias glanced down at the glowing ring on his finger. How was he supposed to turn off an alien artifact? He instinctively clutched the ring tightly with his left hand, covering it fully. The response was immediate and violent. A blast of pure blue energy, like static electricity on a cosmic scale, snapped between his hands. The ring glowed with dazzling intensity before the light abruptly dimmed, becoming a dull, metallic gray. The cold pulse it had emitted ceased. Did it work? Elias gasped, his hands stinging from the residual energy. Anya looked back, her sapphire eyes narrowed in concentration. "Yes, you suppressed the signature. But it will recharge quickly. We have only seconds." They had stopped broadcasting, but the drone had already pinpointed their location. From above, a silent shadow descended. The Harbinger drone was sleek, matte black, and vaguely insectoid, its underbelly dotted with optics and, more ominously, two dark barrel-like cannons. It hovered about 30 feet above the Jeep, its automated systems processing the target. It didn't hesitate. A burst of brilliant crimson plasma erupted from the drone's cannons, scorching the sand 20 feet in front of the jeep. Elias, reverse. Now. Anya commanded. Elias slammed the gearshift into reverse and floored the pedal. The plasma strike had done its job. It had cut off their forward momentum and was forcing them to retreat into the open. The drone adjusted its aim, its silent threat terrifyingly efficient. I need to break its line of sight again. We can't outrun that thing. Elias said, desperately searching the flat landscape. Then we must engage it indirectly, Anya stated, her voice hardening with resolve. She reached behind her back and with a metallic clink she produced a weapon. It wasn't a gun as Elias knew it, but a long silver rod that glowed faintly at its tip. It looked elegant and deadly. Get ready to drive forward on my mark, she instructed, her focus entirely on the drone above. The drone fired again. This time the plasma bolt hit the ground just behind the jeep, sending a shower of burning sand and shrapnel over the vehicle. Anya flung herself out of the passenger side door before the jeep had fully stopped, landing lightly in the sand. She raised the silver rod, and it transformed instantly, generating a shimmering, elliptical shield of pure blue light that wrapped around her like a second layer of armor. The drone, seeing a stationary target, unleashed a sustained burst of crimson fire. The plasma slammed into Anya's shield with a crackling roar. The shield held, but the force of the impact drove Anya to one knee, the light around her wavering violently. Now Elias, drive into the debris field. Elias didn't question her. He slammed the jeep back into drive and aimed straight for the massive cloud of dust and sand kicked up by the drone's earlier shots. As the jeep plunged into the churning chaos, Anya seized her chance. She dropped the defensive shield and, with a powerful, almost inhuman effort, hurled the silver rod. It was an Aetherian javelin, upward. It soared silently through the smoke, guided by a faint trail of blue energy. It struck the drone precisely at the joint where one of its wings met the main body. There was no explosion, only a brilliant flash of white light and the sound of stressed metal. The drone didn't immediately crash, but its smooth, controlled flight became erratic, its cannons swinging wildly. The javelin overloaded its navigation matrix. Anya shouted, running back toward the jeep, her breath coming in ragged gasps. It will self-correct, but it's blind for a minute. Elias had already spun the jeep around, taking them in the exact opposite direction. Anya dove back into the jeep. It will return to the crash site to secure the core, then pursue us with its full tracking capabilities, Anya explained, pressing her hand over the spot where she was wounded. That javelin was my only weapon. We have bought time, Elias Vane, but no more than an hour. The drone will be back. The desert was silent once more, save for the rhythmic beat of the jeep's engine. Elias looked at the incredible, exhausted alien woman beside him. She was not a queen or a bride now, but a desperate warrior. You're not just a formula, Anya, Elias said, his voice husky with respect. You're a hell of a fighter. Anya looked at him, the sapphire eyes holding a flash of surprise, perhaps even gratitude. And you, Elias Vane, are not just an energy conduit. You possess primitive competence. It was a strange compliment, but Elias accepted it. He drove on, the dull, cold ring on his finger a constant, heavy reminder of the fate chasing them. They were heading for the cradle of silence, and now, more than ever, they needed its invisibility. The final stretch toward the cradle of silence was less a drive and more a brutal endurance test. Elias pushed the sand rover past its breaking point, navigating a labyrinth of rock spires and treacherous, loose scree. The jeep roared and rattled, every bump jarring Anya's wounded form. With the Oathstone still dormant on his finger, Elias felt a cold sense of exposure, knowing the invisible eye of the Harbinger drone could sweep over them at any moment. We are close, Anya murmured, her voice strained. She had spent the last 20 minutes tracing the geomagnetic anomalies she sensed through the ring's faint presence. I feel the dampening effect. The ground here is consuming the electromagnetic spectrum. Just as the faint, high-pitched whine of the returning drone began to filter through the night air, they crested a final rise. Below them lay the cradle of silence, a vast, bowl-shaped depression, its walls carved by millennia of wind and water into sheer, towering cliffs. The rock itself seemed to drink the light, making the depression a pit of absolute blackness. It was a natural Faraday cage on a massive scale. Elias drove down the winding path, the jeep's headlights swallowed by the looming shadows. He parked the sand rover deep within a cave-like overhang at the base of the canyon wall, cutting the engine. The resulting silence was profound, heavy, and unnerving. It felt like standing on a planet where sound itself had been outlawed. Anya finally allowed herself to relax, leaning her head back against the seat. This will serve. The geological composition is perfect. For a short time, we are merely thermal signatures, nothing more. Thermal signatures that a high-tech general can still spot, Elias countered, pulling his meager survival gear from the back. How long do we have, truly? Before Malacher figures out we're hiding in a hole in the ground. Anya stepped out of the jeep, her movements still stiff but determined. She looked around the cavern with the detached interest of a scientist examining a sample. Malacher will follow protocol. First, he secures the displacement core from the crash site. That is his priority. He cannot perform his ritual without the power source. Once the core is secured, he will use its processing capacity to refine the Oathstone's residual signature and calculate our trajectory. I estimate 4 Earth days until his main ship is in orbit, and less than 3 until his ground forces begin a methodical search grid. Elias began covering the jeep with a large camouflage net. 3 days. That's our window. We need to figure out how to undampen this ring and activate this conduit before he finds us. You still do not grasp the gravity of the situation, Elias Vane, Anya said, walking over to him. She rested a hand on the rock wall. Where she touched it, a faint metallic sheen appeared on the stone, absorbing the moonlight. The Oathstone, this ring is not merely a key. It is a focus for my Aetherian life force and yours. When it is activated, it facilitates a complete molecular alignment between us. It is the prophecy's way of ensuring the energy transfer is stable. Elias stopped what he was doing and turned to face her. Molecular alignment? Anya, tell me exactly what this ritual does to us. Anya met his gaze without flinching, her sapphire eyes holding a weight of information that spanned galaxies. The ritual is the consummation of the prophecy. It transfers my starlight essence, the accumulated energy of my lineage specially augmented for this mission, into you, the sentinel. You become the living conduit. This essence then passes through the Oathstone, which amplifies it into a gravitational stabilizer wave aimed at Aetheria's sun. And what happens to you? Elias asked, the question tight in his chest. He didn't want to think of her as an asset anymore. Not after the close call with the drone. Anya paused, a rare moment of vulnerability crossing her ethereal face. She looked away toward the vast, empty night sky visible above the canyon rim. The starlight essence is my core. Its transfer is final. When the ritual is complete, Anya, the Starlight Bride, will cease to exist. The energy conduit requires a life sacrifice to complete the flow. The revelation hit Elias like a physical blow, worse than any plasma bolt. He had expected a complicated marriage, maybe a few years of awkward alien diplomacy. He had not expected a death sentence for the woman beside him. You knew this. Elias's voice was barely a whisper. It is my purpose, Anya said, turning back, her tone firm, clinical once more. My entire existence was engineered for this moment. I carry the lineage of sacrifice. The fate of billions outweighs the fate of one. A silence descended on the cavern, thick with the weight of her impossible, brutal duty. Elias felt a sudden, fierce protectiveness rise up. He didn't care about billions. He cared that this woman, who fought like a Valkyrie and spoke like a machine, was already resigned to her fate. No, Elias declared, taking a step toward her. If the prophecy requires a union, we'll have it. But I refuse to believe the key to saving 2 worlds is the destruction of the Savior. We will find another way, Anya. We have 3 days and we have a ring that can do impossible things. We are going to save Aetheria, and we are going to save you. Anya's lips parted slightly, a look of genuine surprise softening the sharp planes of her face. No one had ever offered to save her. She was an instrument, a tool. His reckless, primitive defiance was an anomaly. You offer defiance to a cosmic law, Elias Vane, she said, her voice dropping. I'm offering a better solution. Tell me everything about the Starlight Prophecy, about the core, and about Malacher's ritual. Everything. Because if we're going to win this, we need to be more than just a key and a sacrifice. We need to be partners. As Elias spoke, hundreds of miles away, the Harbinger drone finished its circuit. It hovered over the wreckage, its damaged systems slowly stabilizing, its metallic claws descending to retrieve the still glowing volatile prize, the displacement core. The core's retrieval would now give General Malakor the means and the time to begin his final terrifying hunt for the Oathstone and its bearers. The race against time had just become a countdown to destruction. The cradle of silence had swallowed them whole. The jeep, hidden and covered, was now a dusty, forgotten thing. Elias had found a smaller, deeper alcove in the canyon wall, just wide enough for the two of them to sit and talk, shielded from the minimal light of the high desert moon. "Tell me everything, Anya," Elias urged, his voice low but firm in the profound silence. "If this Oathstone is the key and you are the sacrifice, there must be a flaw in the design. No civilization builds its salvation on a single, necessary death." Anya sat cross-legged, the polished silver of her armor gleaming faintly. She had finally consented to have her regeneration matrix monitored using Elias's most sensitive bioscanner, an old archaeological tool he had adapted to detect trace elements. She drew a deep breath, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet cavern. "The flaw is in the interpretation, not the design," Anya began, her sapphire eyes focused on the swirling patterns on the inert ring on Elias's finger. The Starlight Prophecy was encoded millennia ago. It was built upon a pure energy symmetry, the starlight essence from the bride, matched by the Sentinel's life resonance. The original architects of Aetheria created the Oathstone not to demand a sacrifice, but to facilitate a merging. "A merging?" Elias questioned, leaning closer. "Yes. A symbiotic union. The prophecy states the bride and the Sentinel become the eternal conduit," Anya explained, carefully choosing her words. "The essence flows to stabilize the sun, but the Sentinel's unique resonance was meant to anchor and sustain the bride's core consciousness. They would share a life force tethered by the Oathstone. They would survive together as a single powerful entity." Elias frowned. "Then why the talk of sacrifice? Why were you so resigned to dying?" "Because the prophecy scrolls were edited centuries ago by a power-hungry faction, the very lineage that General Malakor descends from," Anya revealed, her voice tightening with anger. "They deemed the idea of merging with a lesser species unacceptable. They corrupted the ritual protocols, inserting a requirement that the bride's essence be fully consumed by the stabilizing wave, ensuring her consciousness is annihilated. This makes the ritual a sacrificial, one-way flow. Malacher wants to perform the ritual this way not just out of dogma, but because he fears the power of an eternal conduit, a merged entity that would supersede his authority and end his family's reign over the prophecy's interpretation." Elias felt a surge of understanding. This wasn't just a physical rescue, it was a theological and political coup. "So, the ring has two protocols, the true protocol of merging and the corrupted protocol of sacrifice." "Precisely," Anya confirmed. "And the key to selecting the protocol lies not in the ring itself, but in the emotional and cognitive state of the Oathstone bearer, you. The corrupted ritual requires unwavering, cold-hearted duty from the Sentinel. The true ritual requires trust, shared intent, and emotional proximity, what the ancient Aetherian language calls Kalidros." Elias looked at the ring then back at Anya. "Kalidros. Trust. Shared intent. You said my genetic markers have a specific resonance with yours. My primitive competence, as you called it. If I can master the Oathstone before Malacher gets here, I can reject the corrupted protocol and force the true merging. I can save Aetheria and save you. But to master the Oathstone, you must first reactivate it," Anya cautioned. "And that will make us visible to Malacher's sensors. We are shielded in the cradle, but we are also powerless." Elias began to form a desperate plan. "We reactivate it when Malacher is least expecting it. Tell me about his plans. What is he doing right now?" Anya closed her eyes, focusing her highly trained mind on residual Aetherian energy signals. "I can sense the energy signature of the displacement core from the crash site. Malacher's drone has retrieved it. It is currently being transported to the interceptor Aegis, which is establishing a low-altitude orbital position. He will be on the ground shortly, using the core's power to create a localized search grid." "He's using the core to hunt us," Elias realized. "That means he's bringing the power source down here. How do we draw him out of his ship, and into a place where his technology is useless?" "He will come for the Oathstone," Anya stated. "He needs both components to perform any ritual. If we are silent, he will start a methodical search of this entire region. But if we broadcast a deliberate short-range flare using the Oathstone, we can pinpoint our location, and lure him into a trap." Elias smiled, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "A trap in the cradle of silence. A place where his sensors fail, his weapons might be unstable, and the only things that matter are speed, cunning, and primitive competence." They spent the remaining hours detailing the trap. Anya taught Elias the basics of Aetherian tactical movements and the weak points in Malacher's heavy armor. Elias, in turn, mapped the cradle's most unstable pathways and its deepest, magnetically dead zones. They were two disparate parts, the cosmic machine and the desert fox, now working as one. Their survival and the fate of two worlds depended entirely on achieving Kalidros before Malacher found them. The sky, already bruised by the setting moon, was pierced by a silent, burning intrusion. The Aetherian interceptor Aegis, a massive arrow-shaped vessel of matte black metal, established a geosynchronous orbit, its dark mass casting a fleeting shadow over the continents below. It was a cold, arrogant declaration of arrival. From the interceptor's docking bay, a single, sleek landing shuttle detached. Unlike the destroyed escape pod, this vessel was armored and bristling with sensor arrays. It sliced through the upper atmosphere with a soundless grace, its descent path aimed directly at the coordinates of the wreckage. General Malakor, standing rigid within the shuttle's control chamber, felt a familiar surge of satisfaction. The air pressure indicators flickered violently as they neared the surface, but the shuttle's shields held effortlessly. He despised the primitive planet below, its chaotic weather, its unrefined energy signatures, its messy organic life, but he would use its resources to save his own world. The shuttle landed with a heavy thud near the massive, now-cooled crater. Malacher, encased in his full, imposing armor, stepped onto the sand. The Harbinger drone was already there, holding the shimmering displacement core like a prized trophy. Malacher took the core, its pulsating energy cold against his armored gloves. "Pathetic," he snarled, looking at the remnants of Anya's ship. A child's attempt at escape. He instructed his two armored Starlight Guard troopers to establish a perimeter. Malacher then drove the displacement core's stabilizing spike deep into the earth near the wreckage. As the spike penetrated the crust, the core unleashed its stored nebula energy. The effect was terrifying. A dome of shimmering, silver energy erupted, expanding rapidly for miles around the crash site. This was the search grid. It wasn't a visual shield, but a massive energy dampener that suppressed the planet's natural magnetic noise, allowing Aetherian sensors to function at maximum capacity. The terrestrial sands crackled, and the nearby rock formations fractured under the stress of the forced stability. Malacher activated the Oathstone trace program. The core hummed, the silver dome pulsing with intense power, and millions of data points were analyzed in a flash. The initial results appeared on his wrist-mounted display, an Oathstone signature detected. Malacher's silver eyes narrowed in cold fury. The primitive managed to suppress the Oathstone's broadcast, he deduced instantly. Predictable. The Core World's archives mention a few specific geological features on this planet that can interfere with the energy flow. They are hiding in a dead zone. He accessed the terrestrial geological survey data he had downloaded during orbital insertion. His finger immediately tapped the single largest anomaly in the region, the Cradle of Silence. "Of course," he murmured, his voice laced with venom. "The ancient desert fox. Clever Elias Vane. But predictable." He turned to his troopers. "The Bride and the Sentinel are in that canyon network. The cradle's unique composition makes it a perfect natural shield. Our thermal and sonic sweeps will be useless within its walls. We will not use the ship's powerful, indiscriminate fire. I need the Oathstone intact for the ritual." Malacher deactivated the massive search grid, conserving the core's power for a localized push. The silver dome vanished, leaving behind only the scent of ionized air and scorched sand. "We will approach on foot. Activate the bioscanners and set them to the highest possible sensitivity. Their crude vehicles cannot drive far into the cradle. They will be on foot within the canyons. We will hunt them the primitive way, step by step." He looked at the cradle's distant, ominous silhouette. Malacher lifted his plasma rifle, the crimson light from its barrel a stark contrast to the blue glow of the core. His sole objective was to capture the Bride and annihilate the Sentinel, ensuring the corrupted protocol was the only option. He took his first deliberate heavy step toward the canyon, his armored boots crushing the sand, beginning the silent, final hunt that would decide the fate of two worlds. The pre-dawn air in the Cradle of Silence was cold and sharp. Elias and Anya moved with silent, synchronized urgency. They were preparing a battlefield where primitive cunning would challenge alien technology. Elias, utilizing his extensive knowledge of the canyon's geology, had rigged 3 main points of contact. The first was a rockfall trap positioned high on a precarious ledge, designed to be triggered by the weight of armored boots in a specific narrow passage. The second was a hidden dust choke point, where fine blinding silt could be released to disrupt thermal optics. The final and most crucial element was the rendezvous point, a small magnetically dead cave situated directly above a deep, vertical fissure. This was where the Oathstone would be reactivated. Anya meanwhile was focused on the energetic alignment. She knelt beside Elias, her armored gloves tracing the faded, etched symbols on the now dull Oathstone. The moment we activate it, the energy flare will be massive, Anya instructed, her voice a tense whisper. It will act as a concentrated beacon, not just for Malacher's sensors, but also for his displacement core. He will read the signal as a desperate attempt to activate the prophecy's conduit, drawing him directly here. And the sheer power of the flare, will that be enough to scramble his tech briefly? Elias asked, checking the tension on his rockfall rigging. It should cause a momentary sensor overload, Anya confirmed. Malacher's armor and weapons are designed to be stable, but the cradle's natural dampening combined with the uncontrolled burst of the Oathstone's primary energy will be an unknown variable. That is our window, the second of his technological blindness. Elias looked at the ring, the knowledge of the true protocol, the merging, the Kalidros, heavy in his heart. We have to be sure. I can't just activate it, I have to master it. How do I force the true protocol? Anya placed her hand over his, her touch cold against his skin, yet conveying an intense focus. The corrupted ritual requires cold detachment and the intent of sacrifice from the sentinel. To initiate the merging, the Kalidros, you must reject the notion of my death. You must open your consciousness to the ring, to my essence, and demand symbiosis. You must believe entirely that we survive together. Any flicker of doubt, any thought of my purpose being the sacrifice, will default to Malacher's corrupted flow. A cognitive key, Elias murmured. Belief is the final lock. The first sign of the enemy came not from the sound, which the canyon swallowed, but from the vibration in the bedrock. A heavy rhythmic thump, 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 echoing through the rock itself. They are here, Anya stated, rising instantly, her warrior instincts taking over. Malacher and his 2 troopers. Their suits are compensating for the loss of thermal optics, relying on high-resolution sonic mapping. They will proceed slowly, methodically. Elias grabbed the shortwave radio he had adapted. He had to be at the rockfall trap first. I'll slow them down. You head to the rendezvous cave. Prepare the Oathstone for the reactivation. When you hear the rockfall, that's your cue. 5 minutes after that, I will be with you. Do not risk your life, Elias Vane, Anya ordered, her sapphire eyes holding a sincerity that transcended duty. You are the eternal conduit. Without you, Aetheria dies and my sacrifice is pointless. I have no intention of dying, Anya, Elias retorted, pulling on his dusty backpack. I have a bride to merge with. He darted away into the shadowed maze of the canyon floor. Elias moved like a ghost, blending with the rock formations. He reached the narrow passage, the kill zone for his first trap. He could hear the metallic clunk of the armored figures as they entered the passage, their footsteps slow and heavy. General Malakor led the way, his plasma rifle held high. He paused, detecting a subtle, unnatural change in the airflow, a slight breeze indicative of disturbed rock. Scan the overhead structure, he commanded his troopers via their internal comms. But before the troopers could obey, Elias pulled the tripwire. The sound of the cable snapping was lost instantly beneath the awful grinding roar of 10 tons of loose scree and fractured rock cascading down the narrow passage. A terrifying cry of surprise, cut short by crushing stone, echoed briefly. The dust cloud billowed out, thick and choking. Elias didn't wait to check. He knew that heavy armor could survive the impact, but the rockfall would have separated the troopers and, more importantly, disoriented Malacher. He sprinted away towards the rendezvous cave, leaving the first chaotic element of his plan to take effect. He reached the alcove, sliding into the damp, cold darkness. Anya was already there, positioned next to the vertical fissure, holding her hand over the Oathstone. Her expression was tense, her eyes blazing with focused energy. The trap worked? She asked, her voice barely audible. It separated them, Elias confirmed, catching his breath. But he'll be angry. We need to do this now, Anya. Before he recovers his command structure. Elias knelt beside her. The only light came from his small torch and the fainter, ethereal glow around Anya. Remember Elias, she whispered, her eyes locking onto his. No sacrifice. Kalidros. We live. Elias took a deep breath, focusing his mind not on the escape or the danger, but on the impossible connection he felt to the woman beside him. He placed his left hand back over the ring, forcing the energy to rise. The dull metal on his finger flared white-hot. The familiar, terrifying roar of pure energy erupted inside his mind, but this time he didn't stumble. He held the focus. I am the sentinel Elias Vane, he projected mentally, sending his intent directly into the Oathstone and Anya's essence. I reject the corrupted protocol. I demand the eternal conduit. I choose Kalidros. The ring erupted into a blinding nova of blue and gold light, a massive, silent energy flare that shot up the fissure and burst high above the canyon. Was the beacon. Miles away, General Malakor, partially buried beneath tons of rock, shoved a final heavy slab away. One of his troopers was down, the other scrambling to stabilize his systems. Malacher's wrist display, momentarily dark, flashed crimson with the reading. Oathstone active. Conduit protocol initiated. Target, Cradle Fissure 7. Malacher roared in absolute, incandescent rage. The fool is trying the ritual. Troopers, ignore the perimeter. Full speed direct assault. If I can't stop the ritual, I will interrupt the flow and ensure the sacrifice protocol is the only viable outcome. The final confrontation had begun. The light of the Oathstone faded, leaving behind a profound blue residue in the air and a high-pitched, insistent hum that vibrated deep within the canyon walls. The true protocol was in play, but it was fragile, demanding constant, immense cognitive force from Elias. Anya, her face pale but determined, was already undergoing the transformation. A network of glowing blue lines, her starlight essence, was radiating outward from her core through the Oathstone and into Elias's ringed hand. He felt a searing, icy cold spreading through his arm, a terrifying infusion of power that threatened to overwhelm his very consciousness. Focus, Elias. Hold the Kalidros. Do not break the intent. Anya's voice was a mental command, her sapphire eyes locked onto his, desperately anchoring his mind. But before Elias could fully stabilize the flow, a thunderous roar echoed through the fissure. General Malakor, his armor scarred but his rage incandescent, burst into the cavern. He saw the shimmering lines of the energy transfer. The conduit was forming. No. I will not allow the corrupted prophecy to stand. Malacher bellowed. He raised his plasma rifle, aiming not at Anya but at Elias, the sentinel. Destroying the sentinel was the quickest way to interrupt the flow and ensure the default sacrifice protocol. A one-way energy spike that would annihilate Anya and leave the ring vulnerable for his own use. Elias shoved Anya behind the jagged lip of the fissure just as the plasma bolt struck the rock where he had been standing. The explosion was deafening, showering them with fragmented stone. Malacher advanced, casting his rifle aside. He relied on the crushing power of his reinforced armor, which hummed with superior energy. You are an amateur primitive. Your struggle is meaningless. Elias, despite the debilitating, freezing power surging through his arm from the Oathstone, didn't back down. He knew he couldn't win a strength contest. He had to rely on the canyon's unique terrain. I'm the last anomaly you'll ever find. Elias roared back. He lunged not at Malacher, but at the vertical fissure. He grabbed a handful of loose, magnetically charged dust, the dust choke point they had prepared, and hurled it straight into the general's faceplate. The magnetically charged grit instantly short-circuited Malacher's visual optics. The general cried out in surprise and pain, swatting blindly at his helmet. Blind him, Anya. Elias yelled, simultaneously punching a small loose spike of rock into the hinge of Malacher's knee armor. Anya, though half consumed by the blue energy transfer, saw her chance. She extended her hand, and the Oathstone pulsed violently. She focused the overflow of her starlight essence, channeling it not into Elias, but into the nearest electromagnetic node on the cavern wall. A bolt of pure blue energy shot from the rock and slammed into the now blinded general. The force did not penetrate his armor, but the unstable energy field momentarily jammed his internal stabilization system. Malacher staggered, his heavy armor suddenly feeling 10 times heavier, his movements sluggish. Elias saw his opening. He dodged the general's massive flailing punch and instead of attacking the impervious armor, he seized the general's free hand, the one not covered in abrasive dust, and slammed it down with all his weight, onto the Oathstone on his own finger. The crisis of Kalidros. The contact was a catastrophic energetic event. Malacher's pure, cold duty and dogma collided with Elias's desperate trust and desire to save. Inside Elias's mind, the world dissolved into a maelstrom of light. He was flooded with Malacher's absolute conviction, the billions of Aetherian souls that must be saved, the necessity of the bride's annihilation, the cold logic of sacrifice. The Oathstone wobbled violently, the blue energy flow threatening to turn into the deadly one-way crimson spike of the corrupted protocol. Anya screamed, a sound that existed only in their shared consciousness. No, Elias. Fight the duty. Choose the Kalidros. Elias was losing. Malacher's will was too strong, too ancient. In that split second of overwhelming conviction, Elias saw Anya's beautiful luminous essence begin to crumble. The sacrifice was imminent. Then Elias focused on the feeling of Anya's cold hand on his, on the small, almost imperceptible laugh she had given him in the jeep, on the fierce honor she had shown fighting the drone. He rejected the cold calculus of billions. He chose the one. "You are not a formula." Elias screamed both physically and mentally. "You are my partner. We live together." The Oathstone responded to the pure, desperate surge of symbiotic love and defiance. The blue energy flow solidified, and a blinding golden light erupted from the ring. The combined force of Elias's conviction and Anya's essence overwhelmed Malacher's parasitic intent. The general roared, his body vibrating with destructive, uncontrolled energy. His mind, unable to process the true protocol's defiance, suffered a complete collapse. Malacher's massive armored figure was instantly enveloped in a flash of gold and blue light, and with a soundless pop, he was gone. His essence banished to a null dimension by the Oathstone's defensive override. The eternal conduit. The dust settled. Malacher was defeated, the silence of the cradle restored. Elias collapsed to his knees, utterly spent. The Oathstone was no longer vibrating. It was now a part of him, a steady, warm pulse on his finger. The blue essence lines faded not because they were gone but because they were integrated. Anya rose slowly. Her armor was still cracked, but her sapphire eyes were shining with a new, profound light. She was no longer just the Starlight Bride, she was something more. Her face held a warmth and a gentle smile Elias had never seen before. "We did it," she whispered, her voice now resonant and clear, completely free of its former metallic detachment. "The eternal conduit is formed. The true protocol is active." The golden light of the Oathstone flared one last time, sending a massive, focused gravitational stability wave upward, through the fissure and into the cosmic void, a lifeline that would reach Aetheria's dying sun. Elias looked at his bride, his partner, his Kalidros. He was no longer just an archaeologist. He was the sentinel of two worlds, irrevocably bound to the woman from the stars. "We saved them," Elias said, a weary relief washing over him. Anya stepped forward and touched his face, her touch now warm, human, and impossibly tender. "We saved us, Elias Vane. And now we begin." The vast, silent desert was no longer a place of lonely exploration, but a beginning. The eternal conduit was formed, the son of Aetheria was saved, and the man and the woman, bound by a ring and a defiant love, stood together in the heart of the cradle of silence, their future one of shared stars.